Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the VSO Gun Channel. Thank you for tuning in, and it is a privilege to be your host here today. Now, as a political commentator that finds his center in the Second Amendment space, you got good days and you got bad days. And I would say that as someone who lives and works here, I probably have an integration with the bad days more strongly than the good days, just because like the general baseline is Second Amendment all the time, you know, but then when we have bad things that happen in the world, because let's be real, evil people use firearms for evil purposes all the time. And despite what the powers that be will tell you, this is not a recent phenomenon. This is not anything new. This is not something exclusive to firearms. This has been something that has happened since the dawn of humanity. Since someone somewhere picked up a rock and smashed somebody else's brains in, this has been a thing. In fact, I would argue that it predates human civilization and society and even humans in general, because if you look at our nearest cousin, the chimpanzee, that is an organism that has a social structure that is built on resource exploitation in areas. And to accomplish that, they conduct war and genocide. They go into an area, find the resources, push the population that is there out, and or brutally murder them to gain supremacy in the area. Does that sound familiar? And it is no surprise to me whatsoever that common law, religious texts of all the major religions, and ancient law all have some kind of control mechanism in them for the dissuading of individuals from the practice of killing other human beings. That speaks to me as a predisposition towards a particular activity, when basically everything everywhere has to remind everyone that this is something that we should not do. So I will take it one step further and say that the weapons are not the problem. The people are the problem. The control mechanism that keeps the people from killing other people is broken. And we need to look at that to figure out how to fix that problem, because until you fix that problem, it doesn't matter what weapons you take away or what weapons you give. People will pick up a rock and do bad things with it. Because at the same time, there are good people that use guns for good things all the time. It just seems as though the way the news works is that it is and has always been hyper-focused on all the bad stuff. And I think that a lot of you will find truth in that. So we have a choice, and that is that when bad things with guns happen, we can stick our head in the sand and hope that it goes away. And in my experience, that hasn't really done anything of any real substance. Or we can meet it head on and discuss the issues and hopefully uncover some ideas on how we might combat this problem, because this is a major problem. Because we know that the enemies of America are absolutely going to do that. They will exploit every crisis that they possibly can to advance their agenda, which is this pacifistic disarmament mentality, which we've already established does not work, and it will never work, because humans are violent things. They destroy things and break stuff. And as evidenced by everything that you see on the news on a regular basis, when someone has decided that they are done and they are not paying attention to that piece of paper that says that they cannot do a particular thing, there is very little that stands in their way from actually doing that thing, except for somebody else that is willing to stand in their way and take them out.
To me, the fact that it's female is less significant. I think when we get into the writings and into the motive and understand more about this person's life, I think the commonalities between this shooter and the shooters that we've seen in other places are going to start to emerge. We typically see a pretty, I don't want to call it a standard profile, but there are some distinctive elements that are common among shooters across generations, particularly school shooters. Kate can give you the details on those, but there's, these isolated, tormented, oftentimes bullied young people sometimes find themselves in making this decision.
The part that they didn't say that is true in this case and in almost every single case is that it is a raving leftist that has been radicalized by a steady stream of bullshit and propaganda in almost every instance, and I would likely say in this instance as well, is on some kind of psychotropic medication. Now, we'll come back to the medication thing here in a minute, because I would like to focus on the school. And the reason I would like to focus on the school is because this is something that we can actually change. We can't really minority report type stuff, people that are going to do something in the future. There are signs. You can do things like know your children and try to raise them right and all that sort of stuff. Those are all broad platitudes that, as someone who does not have children currently, who hopes to have them here in the coming years, I can't really talk to that. I can't speak to that because I don't live that life currently, and it would be really outside my lane to say that sort of stuff. However, as an active member of society, I can tell you what we can do about those schools, because this specific instance highlights some very glaring problems. The first one is, why the hell did a second grader have to call 911? Where were the adults? The second thing that becomes glaringly apparent when you decipher the details of this horrific incident is that the call was made and then the police response time was about 7 minutes. Now, one thing that I do have a problem with is that it said that the officer waited a couple seconds. It was like 45 seconds or something like that to enter for backup. That is not protocol, and that is not how it should happen. It should be instantaneous entry as soon as the first officer gets there. Now, maybe he was in communication on the way. A couple seconds is not bad for a second officer to arrive, all right? So we're not going to focus on that there, but this idea that we wait for backup thing is dead and should have died a long time ago, because it is a terrible practice, because we know that generally speaking, once first contact is made, the incident ends. However, what that does tell you is that there was not an officer or a security personnel inside that school. Why the hell are there not security people or resource officers inside of every school? We can put them inside of every public building. We can put them inside of every courthouse. We can put them at our discretion in malls and all these other places, but they're not in every school in America. But we can send billions and hundreds of billions of dollars overseas to fight some proxy wars all over the place, but we can't put cops in every damn school. It doesn't make any sense to me. But the other thing that you must also realize, that this was a 15-year-old girl, as in somebody who cannot drive yet. So it's not like this person had a weapon staged in their vehicle outside somewhere. They did not have some kind of protected space that they were able to bring a weapon on premises and then dismiss themselves. This happened during a study hall. Go get it and bring it in. That means they had to smuggle it into the school. And the last high-profile incident was the same thing. They had to bring it into the school. So again, back to this kind of pacifistic, non-show of force mentality that is getting people killed. Why are there not metal detectors on the doors of every school in America? oh, well, we don't want our children to feel as though they're going into, shut up. The concept that this person had hours, because I don't know what time school starts today, but when I was in school, high school started at 7:30. This is a 15-year-old, so that means that they were in high school. So the idea that they had multiple hours of having this weapon on site in order to perpetrate this crime is incomprehensible to me, that this weapon was not detected before then. How is this a thing? When you ask yourself that question, you can only come to the same answer every single time, and that is that we are not taking a serious look at how to prevent that. How do you prevent that? You screen the kids when they come into the school. Sorry. I'm sorry that this mentality that you don't want your kids to feel like they're going through some kind of security or that they have to do this sort of thing. Look, we all go to the airport. I remember what it was like to not have to go through a metal detector or a body scanner or take my shoes and belt off when I went to the airport. I remember what that was like, right? But we also don't have planes being hijacked these days. Let's be real. Even though you could debate about this, the efficacy, the effectiveness of the TSA, the huge physical security barrier does actually prevent the process of bringing something in. Now, if somebody was really sophisticated, could they defeat that? Yes, they could. But in this instance that we're talking about here, we're not talking about super sophisticated people. We have to harden our schools. And the reason that I bring this up is there is a movement in many areas to arm the staff, have resource officers, stop making the doors out of glass, put metal detectors in. I understand that there are places that are moving on this, but it is not across the board. And I also understand that this was a private institution, right? But as someone who is prospectively having children soon and who has discussed this with my wife, we will not consider a private institution that does not have these physical security barriers in place. All right. If they do not have someone who is patrolling the school and they do not have security countermeasures like actual metal doors and metal detectors in that building, I'm sorry that you're not getting our money. And you can do the exact same thing. Go to your kid's school. Go to your kid's school this week. Take a look around. Do they have glass doors that can be busted through? Do they have some kind of screening method, either some kind of device that does it or other physical checks, right? Do they have someone who is armed in that building that can instantaneously meet force with force? Is that person a paid individual that's their whole job and that's all they do all day at that location? Or is it some kind of distributed model? These are hard questions that you have a right as a parent to ask and demand better of the institution that is either getting your tax dollars or literally money out of your pocket for the tuition. You can demand better, and you should, or you should pull your kids out of that school and pick a different one. It is time that we end this, and the way that we end this is by taking an active role in doing it and literally holding the people that can put these things into place accountable. If you show up at you and all the parents in your school show up at your school board and throw a holy shit fit every single month, it will get fixed. The last thing that I want to touch on today, I said I would come back to the medication thing, and there's a movement right now with RFK, all right? And I can see it. I can see it coming a mile away. They're already tying in the gun stuff with the whole stuff with public health, right? And they're trying to spin it in such a way as to make it so that RFK Jr. does not receive support because he has been very vocal on this sort of thing. I mean, he did kind of have, I don't know, his dad and uncle killed. I don't know. He might have a little bit of an aversion to this sort of thing. Let's just be clear. All right. Let's cut the man a little bit of slack. What might be, I don't know, an underlying cause of this sort of thing? The dude's got a hard on for the SSRIs. Okay. And I would like to see investigative research put into the kind of things that those pollutants are doing to people's brains. And this whole thing that they're trying to do with, saying that, he's got, problems with guns with Republicans, and he's got problems with Big Pharma with Democrats, he's not going to get confirmed. We got to head that off before it gets there, because I think, even though I don't particularly like the man's politics on guns or a lot of other things, I do like his politics on making America healthy again. And one of the things that we really have to combat in this country is our mental health crisis. And there are people that need some of these drugs. Don't get me wrong. I know like 30 people on these things. And I'm going to tell you that most of them don't need it. It is overprescribed. I'm going to tell you that they are slung. I don't know what the reverse compensation model is, but they didn't exist 20 years ago. And now they're freaking everywhere. What else didn't exist 20 years ago? I would also point out that we closed all the insane asylums a while back, and in addition to the primary benefits of instantaneously keeping crazy people off of the streets from perpetrating certain types of crime, there are secondary and tertiary benefits to those types of things that I cannot say because it will get me booted off of YouTube.